in three, two. Rust flies are important in the case of streamers. They're somewhat fun to make, and they're a talking point for streamer folks to kind of get their ideas across and show their work. Sometimes they're big, sometimes they're too big, sometimes they're small, and sometimes they're just this or that, and they just seem to come together. What do you look for in your streamer patterns when you've been chasing bigger fish?
Well, it's a really good question, and I'm sure there's people all throughout the country are going to answer it differently. But the first thing I like to look at is the type of water I'm fishing, and the conditions basically. So maybe it rained a foot, maybe they turned a dam on an extra 4 units, maybe there's been no water for days. So the first thing I kind of look at it's really hard as a streamer fly tire, as much as many things as I tie and as many millions of streamers that I've tied over the years and places I go. And it's hard to accumulate a lot of flies when you know that one day on the water is going to change that. So that's kind of the first thing I'm looking at is what are the conditions. Now you can call your guide, and your guide's going to be terrified if you bring a fly. So that's kind of another thing too. But wherever you go in the country, you want to actually know what the conditions are, and then if there is a biomass. I mean, some rivers, you show up in the middle of summer and there's really not much going on. It's just opportunistic. And then other places you go, there might be a shad kill, or there might be crayfish molting, or there might be salmon smolts hatching, or they might have just dumped 20,000 planter rainbows in your river. So that's the first thing you look for is that. Regardless of fly design, pattern, all that other stuff, the first thing you want to try to do is come close to matching something important. And if there isn't anything important, what I like to do is look at the water first. The water is really going to tell you quite a bit about your fly selection, big, small, or whatever. I always go by, if you look at that river and it's a green type river, well, I probably will lean more onto the olive shades. If it's a brown type river, or if it's a tan type river, and that river really is going to tell you most of what you need, especially if it's just an opportunistic situation where there is no biomass. So the first thing I like to do is kind of match my fly to the bottom. And if you're not used to running like 9 weight and 10 weight rods for your general trout streamer fishing, you're probably really good shape if you run a 3 to 4 inch fly. So a 3 to 4 inch fly with the bottom cone matched is something that I really, really look for and put a lot of emphasis on. And like I said, every river might be a little bit different. It might tell you something different, but that's what I look at first. And could be Nowheresville, USA, and I'm going streamer fishing there. And it's the middle of summer, there's nothing going on. The first thing I'm going to look at is what is that bottom telling me? And that kind of, at least in my experience for where I live up here in Michigan, we don't always have biomass. So the river is going to tell you. And then another thing I'm looking for is, the average depth. And then that might, influence my fly tying to say I'm going to add a little bit of weight, or I'm going to add a lot of weight, or I'm going to incorporate that weight with a particular type of fly line. So my patterns are usually, if I just want to catch fish, if I'm going to feed my family, I'm looking at a 3 to 4 inch fly, and I'm looking at something that matches that bottom. And sometimes it might be a shade of copper, sometimes it might be a gold, sometimes it might be a brown or white even. But the river will tell you mostly. And you can always go to a river. This is the good thing out there for guys that are just getting into this. You can always go to a river with a black or a white fly, and one of those two are probably going to work at some point. And you could tie one of each on if you want to. So that's another one. So you can always go, I call it opposite ends of the spectrum. But
Right.
if you really, really want to dial in your presentation, you want to pay attention to what that river actually tells you. So regardless of what fly I'm fishing, or how big or how small or whatever it is, 3 to 4 inches long, that's the bottom for me.
Okay. I think that's a good answer. And some of those things I do, some of those things I don't do. But what I see a lot in especially nowadays is I found this really good pattern on the internet
Oh
and
yeah.
I'm tying it. and I'm going to go out there and throw it, and I throw it all day, and I don't get anything. I see that a whole lot. I tend to shy away from that until I
The
see that it
beauty,
matches something.
right? The beauty of the internet is that is exactly what you say. That guy who tied that fly might have never fished it before.
Right.
You know, your fly tying game here is that 99% of the flies that these guys tie never see water.
Yeah.
Never see water. Not like tie it on, maybe they'll put it in one of those little levitating tanks, which really don't tell you a whole lot, by the way. But most of the flies that people tie on this interweb never see water. They sit and collect subatomic particles. So the best thing to do is get involved in the fly tying thing is to really be proactive because it is a fishing advantage. It's not just accumulating a bunch of nonsense that collects subatomic particles in your garage, right? It's going out there and learning from the river. What did the river tell you that day? What did your presentation? Did you learn something about your presentation? Did you learn about color? Did you say, well, I wish I had a little more weight on there? Well, that being the fly tire, that's your advantage. That's the advantage. But that internet stuff it's real tricky, especially if a guy may or may not fish. He might have 20,000 people following the guy, but he might only be 15 and living in his apartment somewhere. So
Right.
there's that too.
Some of those flies are just to look at. I mean, they are works of art. I mean, there's some super, super talented people out there, but probably 90% of them don't pertain to my 5 or 6 rivers that I fish. They just don't. But but they are works of art. Some of them are.
There's a big thing with the arts and crafts. Thankfully, there are arts and crafts fly tying going on because it drives the wheel for people that actually fish
Yep.
because you actually lump that up. They had the old saying where the average fly rod, high end fly rod, was used 5 times in its life.
Yeah.
You ever heard of that study
Well,
before?
I
But
have. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's true.
that's the name of the company, but the, it's actually been proven that most of the time those rods sit and collect subatomic particles also. So
Yep.
along with flies, it goes right with that. So there is a big element to the arts and crafts and the guys that do it well, and that's amazing stuff. I'm more of all my patterns are tie in guy lost an olive one in a tree. I'm making an olive fly. At 9:30 at night when I got a trip the next day and I'm living in a trailer in Baldwin eating beans and weenies. That's what it is. You need that olive fly.
Yeah.
The
Yep.
flies are very simple. They're platform flies. They can be adapted to many places in the country and throughout the world, really, at this point.
Totally understand that. Totally understand that. That's good information for the first question there. It was kind of there's a knowledge dump right there that hopefully gets people interested and starts engaging their brains as to what's really going on out there. But let's go ahead and kick this show off. From high atop the world headquarters of Southeastern Fly, this is the Southeastern Fly Podcast. Thanks for joining us on this episode. Feel free to share this podcast with your friends and your fishing partners. As you know, we've got a channel on YouTube. So if you can go ahead and click like there and click follow there, that'd be awesome. So who is our guest today on the streamer episode? This guy chases big fish. He's focused on multiple species throughout the year. On the fly tying side, he ties or he's works with Renzetti, Arex, Dr. Slick, Montana Fly Company, and his flies are known and used all over the world. On the fly fishing side, he works with Scientific Anglers, Ross Abel Reels, Echo Fly Rods, Scott Fly Rods, Fish Ponds, Smith Fly, Clacket Craft, Sawyer Oars, Poncho, Tornado Anchors, and Corker. So he works with a lot of different companies and has been in the business for a long time. He's an accomplished and nationally known tire. He's a tire in the Schultz Outfitters Bobbin in the Hood event, and that's the first weekend in February in Ann Arbor. He's an accomplished and nationally known tire, and he's known for guiding folks to big fish. He resides in Traverse City, Michigan, which is a great town. Please welcome to the podcast, Russ Madden. Russ, thanks for stopping by and talking with us.
Saying thanks, Southeastern Fly, David, and appreciate you having me on.
Well, we've got our group, our audience is just made of a lot of interesting people who want to learn. It seems like we get more of those. Hey, I like the way that you talk to people and get knowledge for us. And I want to say, I guess I better take a minute here, Russ, and say to all the people that I've been meeting on the river, it's amazing how many folks that have said, "Hey, I listened to the podcast. Thank you for putting that out there." And everybody's just so nice and so complimentary, and I just appreciate it. Always say hi. I might not recognize you, because we all kind of look the same out there, honestly, unless you're in a boat or have something, a certain hat or something like that that I might recognize. Don't be surprised if I say, "Who is that?" Because I do recognize some voices, but just super great all over the Southeast, overseas. We've got some people that have listened or that listen and have contacted me, and just a really great group of folks. I can't say enough cool things about our audience, and they're at all levels of, from the brand new newbie, and then which we kind of lean more from middle to new than we do from middle to experience, which is pretty common in this in the podcast in the YouTube game. But we probably lean a little more toward the newbie and intermediate person. But we do have some folks that listen and get ideas and try stuff. So that is what I think this particular episode is going to do. So I think since and you kind of touched on this just a little bit, but I want to back up. So you're saying that as far as color goes, uh, a good place to start is look at the water, look at the stream bed, and see get and you can kind of get into the right color range there to start off with, which gives you an advantage right off the bat, if you can do that. But what if you're fishing tannic water? What That's been something somebody, and the reason why I asked that, this is off script, Russ, and I understand that, but I was talking to somebody the other day, and they're like, "Yeah, I need to figure out how to fish brown muddy water, and maybe that's the same as tannic water." I'm like, I don't know if it's brown muddy chocolate milk water is the same as tannic water. I don't know if that I'd put them in the same, but maybe there are some similarities there. So I just give me a quick synopsis of your opinion on that.
Well, high muddy water is going to be a little different than tannic because we could have really, really, low water in places, up north of where I live in northern Michigan or even northern Wisconsin where it's tannic, but it's mere inches of water. Like you'll roll
Right.
over, you can float over it. So I'm not sure if it's the tannic part or if it's the muddy water. What I will say is, was rain involved?
Mm.
That's a one first. Was a dam release involved? And if you, let's say you are fishing just tannic water in general without the dam release, I'll go into that next.
Okay.
Fishing tannic water in general, a lot of times guys like the whites, the golds, and the tans and the browns that have a shade that'll illuminate more, that'll stand out in that tannic water, that'll highlight it. So in the basic clear tannic water we call it,
Hmm. Yep.
but you run that like a tan, browns, combinations of copper, gold flash, a lot of the darker colors. I know that like when I fish with Chris Willen up north in northern Wisconsin, we run a lot of that type of stuff. And, you know, that's the water's not very deep either. It's 5, 6 feet, but it looks like it's 100 feet deep. And you
Right.
roll moist dirt in some areas, but you just can't see the bottom. So in those type of areas, I think that you can get something that'll pop a little bit, like a white or a gold or a tan or a lighter, creams and things like that. Now, high water is a different story altogether because we get high water here too. Those spring flood will come and it'll blow out, and it's like the smorgasbord. So the one thing I will say, if you do have any kind of high water, folks out there, a really good thing to be is on that leading edge of it. You want to be on that rise because once it crests and falls, if you're on a natural flowing river like we have here, you're by the time it starts falling, you're kind of having trouble getting moving some fish because it's like the buffet already happened and now the peak activity is down and they ate like Nile crocodiles and it's catch another one for a while. So if you have a choice to be on the leading edge of that high water, you probably want to be there versus on the backside. Now, if you have a dam situation where all of a sudden it rained 4 inches up in the mountains of Tennessee somewhere, and it caught up to the dam, and now the landowners say they want the water to drop down because their docks are getting weird. They let a bunch of water out. That's a different story altogether, because then you have a controlled atmosphere that those fish might have seen that on, off, up, down period for quite a bit of time. Now, prolonged dirt water, a lot of times it depends on time of year, water temperature, etc. But a lot of times I'll run like a bright, like go get them bright, like a chartreuse, And then last time I fished a Caney Fork, right?
Mhm.
Had that exact situation. Rained and rained and rained, and water came out. There was nothing. The dam wasn't turned on. All of a sudden, turned on, and it was like everybody's yard waste for 2 weeks, straight. Were right in that river, and chartreuse was the key. Bright chartreuse, tennis ball chartreuse, and
Oh,
that was really, really working. So a lot of times when it's really dirty, I'm gonna go as bold as I can. Another good situation when it's really dirty is like a black. Go black, big black with copper, or gold flash, or a combination of the both. That works pretty good. Sometimes your odd colors will work because it'll stand out a little bit, like black and rust, or black and red, or uh, even your purples, or more of the red shade. Just something that's going to set itself aside from the mass that's flowing down there, particulates. So you try to stand out. That's what I like to do. And I like to do that in fall too, if there's a bunch of leaves around, so I like to run something that's going to be stand out a little bit when there's like a bunch of leaves and stuff, even if it's clear water. Sometimes I'll run something pretty bright. So that's a good way to navigate around. And just to answer that question, whether it's dark because of rain, dark because of tannic, or dark because of a dam release, those are the kind of ways that I would personally approach those type of situations. Then the good news is you can run rope. You can tie cable to
yes.
providing thing moves right. So, don't be afraid to run 16, 20-pound guys.
Yeah.
The last thing you want to do after all these efforts of casting is to lose one. So that's, you run as heavy a line as you possibly can.
Yeah. Because on muddy water, they don't seem to come quite as often as what you want them to. You're
Right.
right. Don't want one breaking off. That's
Right.
for sure. So I appreciate you answering that question. I know we didn't talk about this, but I don't know. I'm kind of on the black side of things on muddy water of let's fish black, but I think I might go with your idea of chartreuse. I like chartreuse too, and maybe I can see something hit it where I normally wouldn't be able to find the black fly if it's down at any depth. So
Right. I mean,
appreciate you answering that.
sometimes that dark water, whether it's river Michigan, or river Tennessee, or river wherever Arkansas, when that chartreuse gets down there 2, 3 feet and you can't see it, it's pretty dark.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times I'll have that, especially in rivers that have rainbow influence, I'll call it, where the TWRA may have happened to plant some. So I might run something that might be 4 to 9 inches long in some of those cases, especially if the water's up. I'm bringing my 9 pole, not my 7 weight here.
Yeah.
So I'll bring a 9 weight and 20 pound, no problem. Pretty standard for giant tailwater type
Yeah.
fishery.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move on to presentation. We're talking about you kind of brought in rods there. I don't want to talk about rods yet, but I do want to talk about presentations. Uh, I tend to, as a general rule, this is just David, and everybody does it different. I tend to fish probably a little slower than most. My retrieve is a little slower, and I don't know if that's right or wrong. We do pretty good. I think that there are times that I'll do the run, 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 walk, 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 jog, 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 do all that stuff, but not in that order. But anyway, since we're talking about flies and we should talk about presentation. Uh, One presentation isn't always the key, and I understand that. But what are your thoughts on presentation?
Well, like you said, I mean, sometimes the slow is really good. Now, I picture when you're actually thinking, let's say you're in a tailwater environment, the current's actually moving really fast, along with if you're in a vessel, the vessel's moving also. So
Right.
you might think you are moving your fly like an absolute banshee, but all you're doing is ticking up that slack. So really, your fly is actually moving slow. And that's what they like on those tailwaters a lot of times. Now you can adjust and now further away you get from the dam, the water levels out, and you can adjust the different presentations. But I love running lead by the dams. And I know that I'm just keeping up, especially if the current's booking.
Right.
One strip, two strips, three strip, you're bringing 4 or 5 strips just to get your fly straight enough to fish. And you're basically keeping up with that fly as it's going down the river. And in a nutshell, we call it boondogging up here when you're using a dry fly, right? It's like your nymph out there with one of those orange things. So you're drifting down that river and you're kind of keeping up with that orange thing, Indominator, whatever you want to call it.
Bobber.
And down. So on that perfect angle of that streamer is at 45. And if you can keep your boat in time with that 45, your fly is actually moving very little a lot of the time. And those fish are used to eating that presentation where the ground up shad, they're just coming up off the bottom and eating it. So the big thing is keeping that fly, with a lead presentation is on that 45 and straight, as straight as you can keep it. Throwing the line straight, there's a lot to be said for that. It's not always about the distance, but it's straight. If you get these hooks and curves and all that, tarpon guy throw you overboard. But streamer guys seem to not make as big of a deal about it, but it's really important because that's 2 strips of line that you're going to have to make just to get the thing straight. So, led by the dam, I really love that approach. Further down, and guys will talk different kinds of flies and lines and things like that. And there's a million of them. I can go over all that. But in terms of presentations that I like to use, lead, I like to use a lead weighted fly, like a brush head type fly, where I can adjust the amount of weight that I put into my program. So a lot of times with the lead fly by a dam situation, I'll run a Scientific Angler cold 25 line. Now it can be a 250, it could be a 300, it could be a 350 if you want a 9 pull, whatever rod you want to use. But that's the line I like to use for those lead flies. Not saying it's not a very universal line. Also, there's just some that will hold presentations longer. So if you get into, I'm 2 miles away from a dam, let's say, or I'm fishing the big Manistee up here, and I really want to in a slower water, and I want to move a fly quickly, I can run a hair fly, or a brush fly with the I-Series line. Some of the 357s are a really good line, and that's a universal line too. It just doesn't seem to kick over the lead flies like the Cold 25 from Scientific Angler, or the Sonar Cold 25 if you're getting technical on it. I just call it 5. There's also, here in Michigan, we have small rivers and we have winter. And so that's another one where you want to keep your fly out there as long as possible. So the slow retreat, planning our cast. If I can keep my fly into an area where there might be an active fish for an extra 20 to 30 feet, I have an advantage. So the last thing I want to do is run something that's going to sink directly to the bottom. I want to run a type 3 type line where I can keep that presentation out there as long as I can. I can kind of wiggle it, animate it, do whatever I want. And I'm going to be able to fish an extra 20 to 30 feet of area with one presentation. So that's kind of critical in the area that I live, where the water goes from 71 degrees to 31 degrees. So, that's also something you want to pay attention to is that, and the length of leader as well. A hair fly, if you have a longer leader, it's going to move more. If you have a shorter leader, is what I would use for a sinking type fly, like a lead eye fly. And then some of the brush flies where I have either strips of lead on each side of the front hook, or a few lead wraps, or a brass. Sometimes they'll run the brass and the extra small just for a little bit of weight, or a small. There's a lot of things that you can do with the vise to help your presentation out as well. But when we're talking straight fishing, the lines help you a lot. Lines are a big thing that used to not be a big thing. Because when we started doing this streamer bit, we had like a teeny line, 300 grain, and we're looking at our rivers up here and it's moist dirt. And you had to rip that fly so fast. If the fish didn't have the pointiest hat and the most angry one on the planet, you weren't going to catch one. So now that there's so much diversity in these lines, you can get a intermediate line that's good. You can get we use all these at a certain time. And a lot of times we use the same ones in the same day to make it even further complicated. But it is, it's like a hammer taking a screw, right? You got one tool for a job, and then you got another tool for a job. So you can really diversify your approach now. And it's pretty amazing compared to what it was 25, 30 years ago when the streamer thing started. So it's, hope I helped you out with some of that, or at least kind of gave you a little bit of rundown on that one.
Yeah, what I want to do though, Russ, is I want to go back to what you were talking about because I know this has probably caught some others' attention. And you and I talked about this a little bit the other night. But I want to talk about lead on the sides of the fly versus lead eyes and that sort of thing. Most folks are going to say, I just put some dumbbells on it or put some chain bead on it and call it good. But you're talking about putting lead, wrapping lead on the sides of the fly, I guess, and then wrapping lead around the hook shank and that
Oh,
sort of thing.
yeah, absolutely. If you're talking like a basic tandem streamer, or even a single hook streamer, there's a million ways to apply lead. And it doesn't even have to be on the sides, but sometimes when I'm at the vise, I'm taking a few wraps of lead on the front hook, if I'm tying a tandem fly, or putting one strip of lead, one on each side of the hook shank. And then there are also ways like Mark Sadati would keel the fly, he would put lead on the bottom of the hook. Then there's some smallmouth guys who wrap some lead around the bend of the hook. So there's many, many ways when you're at the vise to get creative when it comes to just applying lead to a front hook. Not even, nothing else, just the front. So you can really vary that amount of weight per your condition of your river, for the amount of, let's say I'm running 12-pound line and I got a 6 weight and I got a type 3 and I'm running 2 wraps of 030 on the front hook and I got I'm running a micro fly, I'm running a 4-6 streamer and I got a type 3, Titan type 3 with a 7-foot leader. And, so you can get it down to that much. You can do it exactly like that. I can tie a whole box of random flies with just 3 wraps of 020, or 030, or one strip on each side. And the way I do it is that I use different threads. I got a million different kinds of threads, right? So I know that even if I have a brown brush head fly or a wool head fly, if I know that it's a brown thread on there, oh, that's 3 wraps of 030.
Oh,
Oh, I got olive thread on there. Okay, that's strips on each side of 020. So that's how I kind of do it. And then I have, my backing colors are different based on different rods. So I can always grab one with different lines. So I might have like a 250 or a 350 or, whatever. But you can really do that with just lead. And there are ways of using chain. You can, if you want your fly, let's say you're fishing primarily on the left side of the river, you can tie a 3 eyeball fly. You can have one chain offset. You can also bend your hook a little bit on the front to give it that keel like we do in Atlantic salmon fishing, like a riffle hitch. So you can do a 4 chain eye. You can do a 3, you can do a 2. So just with chains, and you can change the action of your fly very, very easily by simply cutting one more chain off. And I encourage you guys to try these methods, because you could take something as simple as one of my original fly, circus peanut, and you can tie that thing 100 different ways. And that's why it's such a great guide fly for me and everybody, a lot of other people around the planet, is you can do so many different things with it very easily. You can, like I said, try 3 chains. Take one of your flies out there, try three chains, take one of your eyelets and bend it towards you. Because that loop knot's going to change. When you pull on that loop knot, it's going to do different things.
right.
So, and if you had 2 strips of lead on one side or one on the other, or a keel to keep it completely straight. So there's a million ways you can weight your flies very easily, but it only comes if you're a fly tyer. And it only comes if you're a fisherman in a fly tyer.
Right.
That's I always say the best fly that you have is the one you tied the night before, because you learn. So that's kind of where I'm at in my fly tying. I always go and try to learn what the river tells you first. And then if you have another day or another 2 days, you can take a little bit of that knowledge. Okay, well, that brown kind of worked, but I need a little bit more weight. So I'll try this, try a little bit of lead eye on one, and then I'll try chain on one, and, so on and so on. So that's kind of how you can do it with just a basic fly tying lead. I mean, the strips, wraps, keels, wrap around the bend, tons of ways you can weight a fly, and they all do different things to your fly. And I would encourage all you guys to try that, because that's what fly tying really is when the rubber hits the road. It's creating an advantage that only you have. So that's the best part of fly tying. I tell that to everybody everywhere I go to tie flies. It might be one of the last advantages that fly fishermen have, because if it's pretty basically the same, and boat handling, well, 50-50, who's running the boat, so you really, all you got is your fly, right? From a guiding standpoint. That's why it's so scary when people bring their own flies when you're a guide.
So I want to back up. Let's back up and just take, I think this will answer a lot of people's questions as far as a place to start. If I tie my own fly and I put a strip of lead on the left side, just down the left side, like you're talking about,
right,
what are the advantages of that, and what are the places where I might want to fish that?
Well, let's say, here's a good one for you. So you're wading angler, and now you got your weight always going to one side, right? So if you're fishing and you know that you can't, there's no way for you to cross that bank. There's a dam 100 feet high, and it's danger. You're Jacques Cousteau if you go out there. So you're only fishing that side of that river, right? So you can cant everything. Either you can put lead to one side, you can cant your eye to the other. You can put one lead on one, you can change that for just that side of that river. If you have that loop knot on there and you have your eyelet, let's say I'm doing the opposite. Let's say I'm rolling it away from me, but on the vise, but everything's away from me. Now I know if I'm pulling it to that right side, I'm getting more tension. So that fly is going to do a lot of this one direction.
Right.
So I pull again, it's going to straighten out. So it's always going to be hitching that one side. So I'm going to be able to get more broadside with bending that eyelet or putting lead onto one side. You can do that very easily. And you can set it up just so you're fishing one side of the river. Now I don't recommend that for guys in a boat, because you're changing sides all the time. But I do bend like every single, my shanks when I'm doing the up eye. I do a lot of up eye shanks. I always bend them, and I could roll it away from the vise just because it's easier for me.
Yeah.
So on the side of that river, I'm going to get way more of this stuff than I would on the other side. But I do like that rolling one away, because I can always make that fly cannel do a lot of this.
So do you like that better than the lead?
Well, it's not better than the lead eye, because lead eye, I don't want the fly to move, right? In theory.
Right.
Now, down, but the current's forcing it, so it's dead drifting, right? So it's a totally different presentation, but I do like it just as much as the lead, and it's a very important presentation. Same with chains. Chains are important too, because everything you add to a fly has weight. So that's the theory that there's no such thing as an unweighted fly. It's actually true, because glue, hooks,
True.
thread, everything's weight on there. Everything you put onto these flies is weight. So that's, part of it. So and remember, you got to cast that too. So you got to think about that as well. So if you don't have enough weight to counteract all the stuff you got on your fly, it's going to be a burden to cast, right? So you want to add a little bit of weight, usually. But is it more effective to have lead strips, lead wraps, lead whatever? It's just a different presentation, because I can really move those flies more when I'm tying them. And like I said, sometimes, let's say I'm in Arkansas and the water's dropping, and I got to burn some flies over those grass flats before they're dry land, right? So I want to use those fast moving presentations over that stuff. I might go to my 357 and a hair fly, or a 357 and a light brush fly, to really crack those flies moving super quick across those grass areas. I might take one rod and put it off to the side when I'm in that area, just so I can burn those flats. and then I'll be into a different stretch. Let's say it's all boulders, and I'll switch presentations again. So it pays to have several rods, and it doesn't really matter if you're bass fishing on Lake Michigan or you're trout fishing in Tennessee. Couple presentations gives you that advantage. It's not like Kevin Van Dam isn't going to one bass tournament with one rod.
Yep.
You know, that's, you know what I always say, but you know, it's my support for Scott Fly rods and those guys. You know, you got to have a lot of rods.
So talk about 357. Tell the folks what that is.
And what those integrated, it's an integrated line from Scientific Anglers. There's probably several other companies that have some, but I deal with Scientific Anglers from Michigan. They're my guys. Like a 357 is the first part of the line. Let's say it would be the reverse. So it'd be like the type 3, type 5, and type 7 is integrated into that line. So if you cast that whole thing out there, you cast 85 feet out there, you're going to be able to hold that presentation a little bit longer with a fly that's lightly weighted, right? So whether it be a chain, whether it be a couple strips of lead, whether it be hair, you'll be able to hold that fly a lot longer. So that's what that means. And they have several different ones. Just because myself, I like the 357. I've used them a lot, like in Tennessee in particular. I use them here sometimes for salmons, but it's so shallow here, or the water is very low here these days, like the past 4 years. Haven't been able to run that. So I actually go with the next one that sinks a little bit less, which is like the I-35.
Yeah.
So they make an I-35. So that's intermediate, type 3, type 5. Gotcha. So I a little bit more than I used in the big stuff. Same side, I might run a 10-weight rod with the same line, but it's gonna sink a little less. So I'm not gonna have to like force my guy to like, sweat into the oldies trying to get the thing in.
I went through that whenever I first started streamer fishing. I've got my favorite line is pretty heavy, and we went musky fishing with it, and the water was really low. And I mean, I ripped that thing back the whole day and and I was like, why did I not bring something else? Right. I just went out there. We were basically just going to fish, and I thought if I had just brought this other setup, I'd have been so much better off, and I wouldn't have been so dang tired.
David, been there. I've been there. My customers have been there. And it's changes. It's a attitude changer when you have something that you don't have to like rush in.
Yes.
And so, and a lot of times when the water gets slower, like away from those dams and stuff, it's just not. You don't need that meat. You don't need that kind of depth. It's not like you're gonna take that fish down to take your fly down to that gated community and make that fish eat.
So true.
That fish down there, if you're looking down there and you can't see bottom, I turn around and cast where it's shallow. I don't like casting in those gated communities, man. That's like, you could spend a lot of time in there trying to bring that little buzzer on that fence. But man, it can be tough. So that's another little tip out there for guys that are just getting into this streamer thing. If it looks like you could drop your anchor and the rope all is gone, don't cast in there. Turn around and cast where it's shallower. Because chances are they're not going to levitate out of the deep, dark dungeon and eat your piece of chicken. No. They're going to eat on the inside edge where it's shallow, where it slopes into the deep water. That's where your active fish is going to be. So, stay away from those gated communities. That's what I call it. I've done that, been there, done it, got the T-shirt. Don't need to do it anymore.
They will use those active communities as a place to get away from stuff,
right.
A place to run to when they're scared.
That's right. That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. It's pretty hard for them to go 14 feet from the ground up to eat a piece of chicken.
It better be a great looking fly.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't even like those lures and stuff up in there, even a live shiner. Active fish are not going to be in those areas very often, but they lure people in like a trance.
Oh, yeah.
Like one of those bug zappers. People just like, what are you doing casting over there? It's outer space. It's like a bug night.
Oh, that's so true and so funny. Oh, well, I want to switch gears just a minute here. everybody's got this story. And one day I got a text or an email from a guy that listens, and he said, "Hey, I want you to do a one that got away episode." And I said, I think I just want to incorporate that into each each interview episode that we do. So we get so many more stories that way, and so many more opportunities for a good story. So every angler has one, me included. It's easy to show a pic of a big fish. I've got them on my phone. You've probably got them on your phone, which is fine. But then that after you catch it and you take that pic, it's over. I mean, how'd you do? Well, I caught the biggest fish of my life. Oh, that's great. Let's see a pic. Okay. Oh, wow, that is big. Okay. That's the end of that story. But the one that got away is so much more interesting to me, that I want to hear about that. So tell us about the one that got away.
Well, you always for me, it's always like the last one that I remember that got away. Never, there's been many in my life. I could talk about, I was fishing tarpon. I had a really good one on. This was back when everybody was 100% IGFA, old school Billy Pate. You're standing in the front of a boat running 16-pound line, and your fish is like 3 football fields away, and you're just like hoping it stays on. And 4.5 hours later, it falls off, and your guide's like, "All right, come on, get ready to go again." And I'm like, "No way!" But there's that. But really for me, it's always the last one. The biggest heartbreak was obviously, you fight a fish for a few hours and lose it. But it's always the one that you just had, like the one that just stings still. And, let's say July before I got my hand surgery, I was up there fishing with Chris Willen, and we put in some hours casting on the mighty muskies, and I'm stubborn and I like to run the fiberglass rod because it's good on my thumb. So I hooked a really giant muskie, and it was right at the side of the boat, sitting there ready to go into the net. And it's shaking its head violently, and I'm pulling, and the old blue halo's bent into a circle, and then it jumps like 4 feet in the air. And both Chris and I look at there, and it was like one of those, you go to picture northern Wisconsin, and you're in a bar, and there's like one light on, and it's all dark, and there's that Budweiser sign up there, and you just see that muskie jumping. That's what it was like. It was like that. Still, like, I'm gonna hire one of these painters to do a thing of it. It was that. It was slow motion. It was like the whole time stopped. It was the whole time stopped. It was over both of our heads. We just sat there and watched it jump off. It was like the greatest. It was the greatest thing, but it was also like you drag the butt of the rifle. Then the rest of the float, that 11 weight fiberglass rod was looking like a sledgehammer. It was just like, I'm gonna grab that thing and start heaving that thing around again. So that's kind of for me. It's always that last one. I don't get to fish as much as like fishing in a boat with like a guy that's rowing me down the river. I'm always the guy rowing. So like the ones that I love fishing with the muskie guys because they got it right. Their heads are in the right spot. I always say, and it's, you never really know what you sign up for when you do that stuff. And that's very much like that streamer fishing in general. So you can't really drag the butt of the rifle too bad when something like that happens. I've never seen one jump that high. So it was cool, but it was all, time stops, and it's like, you know, just that, and Chris and I just looked, and he just jumped off. And it was great. It was absolutely great. Wouldn't trade it in for $1,000,000, and probably something I'll remember forever. Just picture that Budweiser sign, or something back in the days. But that's what it looked like.
That's awesome.
Right.
Oh, oh my gosh. Oh, all right. This is going to be probably the meat and potatoes of the title to this particular episode. And let me see what I thought I did. Oh, yeah, the mentality of a streamer angler. So all of us are crazy. I'm going to go ahead and put that out there so that everybody knows. We know we're a little bit off. Whatever it comes time, it is a mentality. I can get in it and I can get out of it. Only because I have to. But when I'm in it, I'm in it. I'm in it. I'm all in. But For me, it's about being prepared, giving the right presentation, but it's mostly mental for me. Now, for you and for others, it may be different, but after all the seasons of fishing and guiding on all that different water for all those different species, from your perspective, what is it that makes it most successful streamer angler?
It's exactly what you said. It is 99% mind game, because when you do these things, and especially when you sign on for things that are difficult, or you fly, a couple thousand miles and you go somewhere, and it's like, well, you might get one. That's what it is. It's the drive, it's the trains, it's the hard, it's hard fishing. Streamer fishing isn't easy. It's seldom the most effective. And you're right, we're nuts. We're crazy. There's no doubt about it. There's definitely, yes, we're crazy. But it's really, it kind of envelops your whole life. So that's all I guide, except for like maybe a week or two of dry fly fishing that I really enjoy. But so I just kind of move through my season, and I look forward to every single season and every single challenge. But I know what I'm signing up for. And a lot of my customers know what they're signing up for too. It's, when you go to a place, you might have one bite for 5 days. It's not like going into, Johnny Morris theme park of, trout fishing here. This is difficult stuff. I mean, when, and my brook, she's from Tennessee too. So when you go to these places that are tough fishing, and where you're just looking for that one or two bites in a week, you really have to, it's not for a weak mind. It's not. And you can't be angry at the fish. And I always say that, oh, you can't be angry at the fish doing this stuff. You just gotta be enveloped in the method and keep doing right. And when the bite happens, be ready. And if you lose it, suck less. That's what it is. So it's not about dragging that butt of that rifle and all boo hoo. It's picking yourself up and going another 4 days, or going another 5 days, or going 25 days. Like some of these muskie guys, they're not getting a bite every day. So it's not, as one of my good buddies, Alex Lafka, says, it's not the guy who goes like 25 days. It's the guy who goes 27. You can go 20 something days without a bite and still go in with the same conviction that you had on the first day. That's what that is. That's the mentality that you need. And it's not always that hard, but it's a lot of time, it's seldom the most effective. I always say, don't be angry at them. It's like I had one guy a long time ago in my life when I used to do a lot of night fishing, and I was filling my car up and had the old clacka in the back. And this guy looks at me, and I have a headlamp on. He looks at me, he goes, man, you must be angry at those fish. Because I'm out there, it's 3:45 in the morning. There's just a truck driver getting ready to go to work, right? And I thought about it, man, he's right. I'm out here at 3 in the morning filling my car up. I've been out all night. You know, it's you can't be angry at them. You gotta just do right, and have that mental fortitude to go that 27 days. So that's really what it is. And it's the greatest thing in the world, because it's life changing. Every single great bite you have is life changing. That's what it is. And whether it's a brown trout, whether it's a pike, whether it's a muskie, whether it's a smallmouth bass, whether it's a striper, a wiper, or whatever that creature is, it's not about the spots. That's another thing. Guys get all wrapped up into what kind of spots that thing has. A real streamer fisherman is going to fish for that method no matter what. It's ride or die. It's if there is no trout to be had and it's 71 degrees, we're going to the bass. We're fishing bass. And if that's not happening, we're going to fish kings. And if kings are happening, we're going to fish muskies. And if muskies aren't happening, we're going to fish pike. Whatever it is, it's just a mentality. You just try to create a loop in amongst your area of what the coolest things are at the moment. and you do that, because it's not about the spots, it's about the method. And it's hard for a lot of anglers that are used to putting up those numbers, chasing after the orange things, and a freshly planted zone, when you can get 100 fish. It's not that, it's not that you're fishing for like a percentage of the fish that is so small that it's that next level, and it's really just a exercise of mental fortitude. I guess I don't know any other way to put it, which makes everybody a little bit off.
Yeah, right.
Med-
That's so true. Um, yeah, I don't. I mean, so I do, I do, and I don't have this one thing that we do. I do a lot of different things, from streamers to terrestrials. Right now is a big thing for us, which I love that. I think I love it all. I mean, I think I love bobber fishing. I think I love streamer fishing. I love terrestrials. I love dry flies. I mean, I throw nymphs for smallmouth. I'll throw poppers for smallmouth and largemouth, and just all of it. I like it. Just streamer fishing is different. You have to be different, and you have to have somebody. If you can't do it yourself, you have to have somebody that can say, "You're falling off your game a little bit here or here, and you need to pick that up because you're going to get your heart broke if you don't." And that to me is worth its weight in gold whenever I'm fishing with somebody and they say, I was fishing with a friend of mine the other day, and he said, you might want to stop that rod a little longer anyway. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, we sure are rushing it. And I was like, well, thanks. That hurt a little bit, but thank you. And that sort of stuff is worth having. And in the streamer game, it seems to go, it seems to mean a little more to me for somebody to be able to say, hang on a second, again, you're going to get your heart broke because there's something big is going to come up and you're not going to be ready. You're not going to be in the right place at the right time. Like you letting go of your line or whatever it is. There's a million different things you can do wrong. And like, fishing a bunch of days in a row, it's easy to become complacent. Say, I just throw this out there and pull it back. And, it just is.
oh, I know. I mean, I see it all in many, many years of, watching and having, a person in my life that's significant, my Brooke, learning how to do the streamer thing, and watching, like, I'm taking 25, 30 years worth of stuff and trying to cram it in her mind in like 5 years. And, I mean, there's some Kleenex was sponsoring our trips for a few bits there, you know, and, and she's like, finally I lost the Kleenex sponsorship, but it's like it takes so much time, like way more time than you think. And most people, when they realize the actual effort that the streamer fishing takes and the curve that because there is a curve, because it's not just whipping a fly out willy all over randomly. It's precision where you're casting, it's knowing what the fish might be feeding on, it's picking up on currents and where the fish might be located during that day or that mile of river or particular. So it's a brutal curve, and if you can get past that curve and have some successes, even mild successes, it's really all you'll want to do. It's all you want. And don't get me wrong, I love throwing the dry fly. I love the dry. I love fishing hatches. I like doing the big terrestrial stuff. I love doing that side. I love boondogging. It's great stuff. But when it's, because that's the time, and the time is the time. So I
Yeah.
got one that I'm a diehard dry fly guy. And then I got, the rest of my time I'm putting into as much streamer fishing as I could possibly get into. And it's all good, but it's really putting yourself into that situation where you can actually get back on that horse, take a little bit of abuse, because these guys that do this streamer thing, they know they want to get one more than you. So it's, yeah, stop dragging the butt of the rifle. You cast right there, cast. You call that a cast? What are you doing looking at your hands? I've been there your whole life. I mean, So there's, it's that motivating ear, it's that motivating person in that middle of that boat. That's a lot of streamer fishing, is how you can motivate your guy to push through those time frames where there hasn't been a bite in 5 hours. And you see the guy in front look at the guy in back like you don't even exist. And the guy's got his arms crossed and looking at his buddy like, what the hell did you do to me, Fred? What did I sign up for here? It's keep casting. That's what it is. It's just keep casting. And
Uh,
you have to get past that, because there are so many little nuances in that streamer game that can really turn you off to it or really turn you on to it. And a lot of it's that guy in that middle. You know, a lot of it's that guy in that middle. I spent a lot of time down there in Tennessee with multiple guys, and I love fishing Tennessee. I like fishing with Jason McReynolds, like fishing with Jason Crummer, and it's the guy in the middle that puts you in that position. And you might think it's this robot casting or this and that, but it's like, no, you can't just bring the fly. You got to fish that fly. Fish that fly.
yes.
Bring that thing in. Make sure that thing's down to that level where you need to be. Stall it. Give it the courtesy pause. Something. Don't just yank it out of there. You're going to see the biggest jaws of your life come after it. It's a lot of it comes from the guy in the middle.
Yes.
But if
So true.
you can motivate your guy, that's what it's really all about, I think. And it really adds to the success. But that's what it is. That's about being that streamer dreamer. That's what it is. It's just, it gets in your blood for sure. No
It
doubt.
it certainly does. All right, let's that I think is the mentality of a streamer fisherman right there. What we just talked about for the last 5 or 10 minutes or whatever that was. But so if you need to go back and listen to that again, I think there were a lot of good little nuggets dropped in there that maybe I probably didn't catch the first time. And I mean, I need to go back and listen to it too. But so, Rush, you've been down here a whole lot, fishing over to East Tennessee, fishing in Middle Tennessee, you've in Arkansas, and a lot of other places. And all of these techniques and all this information can be used in one way or another down here. But I want to zip back up to Traverse City. And what a great part of the world. I mean, water everywhere, beautiful. Just I tell people about Northern Michigan, and they think, oh yeah, big lake, Michigan's flat. And they've kind of got it in their own mind of what it's like up there. And probably 75% of the time that we're wrong about what it's like up there until you go see it. Uh, Traverse City's a special place. All that whole top of the mitten up there to me is very special. Living up in Midland and Cadillac and Hart and the places that we lived as a kid, other than the snowmobiles, the skating and the hockey and all that stuff that we used to play, I have had an appreciation for it. But we went back up probably 10 years ago, and we went up the west coast of Michigan, all up through Lake Michigan, all the way up to Mackinac Island. And we stopped and camped along the way. But one thing that I didn't, we found a really good spot on Torch Lake that I understand is burnt down now. So we had some really good food. That's the one meal that I remember. But since a lot of people here like to travel, I recommend you going up there to Northern Michigan and traveling up there. And can you give us some intel besides the fishing? Because you can work that out when you get up there or before you leave. But can you give us some intel on where some good places to eat are? And then I want to circle back and talk about some good places to stay in and around Traverse City.
I could certainly do that for you. I'm going to consult my Traverse City Chamber of Commerce gal, and she's going to talk to you because she is from Middle Tennessee, remember?
Yeah.
She is from Middle Tennessee and is now residing in the Traverse City. And she is going to dial you right in. It's going to be good for her. She's going to make everybody laugh, but it's going to be, this is the gal who is going to tell, this is my Brooke Rice right here from Middle Tennessee.
Hey, Brooke.
He's going to talk some great stuff about Northern Michigan and her experiences up here, because she's just a tourist at one point.
Well, thanks, Russ. Yes, so 7 years ago, I did leave Middle Tennessee, the Nashville Franklin area, and moved to Detroit. And then 4 years ago, I moved up to Russ here in Traverse City. So I had no clue all that North Michigan had to offer, even when I was living in Detroit, much less when I was living in Middle Tennessee. And now I know why Russ, out of anywhere in the world, he could have picked to call his home. He decided to move to Traverse City, Michigan when he was 18, out of anywhere, any state, any country. And so it's because there's so much here. And like you said, David, not only is the vast amount of fishing opportunities that are year round, and we do ice fish as well. So just as much ice fishing as fly fishing. But in addition to those vast fishing opportunities, there's so much to do. If it's hiking, if it's riding dune buggies, on the sand dunes, is it riding a bike? Is it camping? Is it just looking at the landscape? Is it picking rocks that are found only here in North Michigan along the beaches? Is it taking in the Great Lakes? I mean, coming from Tennessee, the first time I saw Lake Michigan, I'm like, that doesn't look like a lake. It looks like an ocean, right? It's
Yep.
huge. But then I think something that Russ and I really enjoy here is just the opportunity for so much farm to table. I think that was something that was shocking when my family came to visit for the first time recently, is that so many of our restaurants are from the food is sourced from right down the road, whether it be, the water or a farm or a vineyard. Traverse City is the cherry capital of the world, right? I mean, it's the perfect conditions for growing berries and cherries, apples, cranberries, blueberries. I mean, you name it, the list goes on. And just our downtown Traverse City, the peninsula's downtown, have over 40 vineyards. So that's another reason that, Traverse City on the map for an international destination are our vineyards. So it was the #1 city to retire in the United States in 2022. It's been consistently on the USA Today top must visit vacation bucket list city across America, #1 foodie city in America. So there's a lot to do and so much that we enjoy. And Russ is a coffee snob. He's a great coffee snob. Some amazing local coffee shops here. And one that we really enjoy is called Mundo's. Another one is Higher Grounds. And it's just fun to, go to your local brewed coffee shop and, get your regular. So that's been fun for us. And as for a restaurant, I think one of our favorites is the Boathouse. And it's always a, top rated and farm to table. And yeah, so lots to do.
So one of the things that when we were up there, I saw were some asparagus farms.
Yeah.
And I love asparagus. And we did not stop and buy any. I don't remember if it was out of season or what, but I regret that. To this day, I kept thinking, why did I not stop and at least see if we could find some?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And in the restaurant that we just mentioned, the Boathouse, right now on their appetizer menu is the tempura asparagus from right down the road. And yeah, there's green and purple asparagus and all the fresh corn. And
one thing that I think people in the South don't experience is rhubarb pie and rhubarb.
Oh yeah,
it's your dad's favorite.
It is dad's favorite. Yeah, and he's there in Franklin, right? So yeah, but we sent him some rhubarb, some strawberry rhubarb preserves from the Keweenaw Peninsula, Keweenaw, right, of the Upper Peninsula. And they're preserves, their jams and jellies, incredible, and they ship to you. But the rhubarb, you're exactly right. Delicious.
Yeah. So what about a place to stay? Where's a good place for anglers to stay, both with their family and, whether we go up there for a week and we're with the guys and we're all smelly too. So both of those both of those kinds of places to stay. Where would you recommend?
Yeah, well, I think with, obviously like Traverse City being such a resort community, I mean, there's so many options of places to stay. But one of our favorites, it's about an hour and a half, hour and a half from us on the Pierre Marquette in Baldwin, Michigan, is the Red Moose Lodge.
Oh,
And you just step right out and you're there on the river, the PM River, world-class fishery. It was the first river where the brown trout was ever planted in America. So in 1884. So it's a very, very historic area, the home of the Underground Railroad. So much incredible history there. But certainly the Red Moose Lodge, and and then up here, there's it's like for a family, I would say the Grand Traverse Resort and Spa kind of has something for everyone and a lot to do for the little kiddos too. And my family just came in and stayed at a place called the Flats, which was downtown at Front and Union Street. There's also Hotel Indigo, which is right on the beach on Lake Michigan in downtown. Very walkable to wherever you want to be. And
The Grand Beach is good too. Sugar Beach. There's a bunch of it's a beach town, so all those are really good also, and they're during the season, which is anytime that's basically what between Memorial weekend and Labor Day weekend, you're going to pay a little bit more, but a lot of those time frames aren't really when the greatest fishing is anyway. So you'll get cut slack, but there are so many things just with a simple search. You can find places up here that are $59 to 500, plus dollars, and everything in between. You can get a campsite. You can get,
so many campsite state parks.
There's national park,
RV friendly.
the sand dunes, the national park. They got a new national park with Sleeping Bear Dunes, which is pretty cool to check out too in general.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, that's another thing people don't understand is how big the sand dunes are there. They're huge. They're just really big, really big. And all I can say is they're huge, and you can take a picture of them. And if you don't have something to scale it by, you're like, hey, okay, it's sand dune. We've got them down in Florida, Cape Sandblast. No, they're not that way. They're much, much bigger.
They actually have saying, don't walk down there. You're going to have to come up.
Exactly.
They actually had to have a rescue for last week. People up to the top because it's you think, oh, it's no big deal going down, but it's you're walking across sand on a 45-degree angle. Guys used to hang glide off of that thing back in the day.
Exactly. Well, that's a ton of info. Thank you, Brooke. And I was going to say at the end of the show, thanks to Brooke, but I'm going to tell you right now, thank you for helping us get this set up, and your insight and the emailing back and forth and all the things that it takes to make one of these things happen. And I know that you're kind of the person in the background, but that information that you just gave us and all the work you've done, we really appreciate what you've done.
Oh, well, we appreciate what you're doing, David, and just sharing fly fishing with the world. And thank you for having Russ so much. So thank you. And I love that you're from my home state.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever I heard you were from here, I was like, how in the world did she get up there? Interesting. So, but good for you. Good for you for going up there and getting away from Detroit.
Detroit actually has a lot going for it, and it's where I first learned to fly fish through Schultz Outfitters.
Oh, did you really? Okay.
Smallmouth bass, and that is how Russ and I met. He saw a picture that Schultz Outfitters posted and realized I was hiring his friends as guides. And then we eventually met about a year later, and the rest has been history.
Good for you, Russ. You got a good one there, Russ.
I do. She's the best.
Obviously, she can't see a lick. I bet she can't see 2 inches in front of her face. I'm kidding.
I'm thankful we lost our Kleenex sponsor, though.
Yes.
Like
that. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and close this thing out. Thanks, Brooke.
Thank you.
share this from with your friends and your fishing partners. And when you get to wherever you're going to listen or watch, give us a follow, give us a share. A review would be great. Kind review would be great. But so who was our episode on this guest? Or on this who was our guest on this episode? Who was our episode on this guest? It must be getting later. It's close to my bedtime. Uh, who who is our guest on this episode? Uh, what a great streamer and fly tire. Chases big fish, focuses on multiple species throughout the year. On the fly tying side, he works with Renzetti, Arex, Dr. Slick, Montana Fly Company. And on the fly fishing side, Scientific Anglers, Ross and Able Reels, Echo, Scott Fly Rods, Fish Pond, Smith Fly, Clacker Craft, Sawyer Oars, Poncho, Tornado Anchors, Corker. Uh, he's going to be one of the tires, or is one of the tires at Schultz Outfitters Bobbin in the Hood, the first weekend of February in Ann Arbor. He resides, as you heard, in Traverse City, Michigan. Very familiar with Southern waters for sure. And Russ, just really want to thank you for stopping by.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show here.
Yeah, what a great bit of information, something that I hope our folks will go back and listen to many times before they head to the river. So um, just thanks to you and to Brooke, appreciate it. So you just listened to Russ Madden and the mentality of the streamer angler on Southeastern Fly. See you next time.